Choice, your creative superpower. We have the power to manifest as we dedicate attention to our thoughts, but often miss opportunity to achieve the greatest good. Your superpower is waiting to be unleashed to unlock a fuller, more rewarding world for all. Join us every Thursday at noon Mountain Time for Choice, your creative superpower with Zoe Muro. And now, here's Zoe.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the New Thought Media Network. My name is Zoe Muro, and I am delighted and honored to be your host for Choice, your creative superpower. We're coming to you from Oakland, California, each Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 12 noon Mountain Time. We are here to explore how you can wield your superpower for the greatest good and co-create your most fulfilling life experience. For those of you coming back, it's so great to see you here again. A few first-timers, welcome and thank you for tuning in. I'm a religious science practitioner with the New Thought Media Network, as well as a transformational coach. My ministry as a practitioner and my mission as a coach are to help people live their lives to the fullest. Today, in episode 46, we're going to be exploring the relationship between choice and stress. You know, I think I actually had avoided this topic for a while because it just felt so negative. I don't know. Or maybe it's because it's something that I've struggled with so much over the years and would like to say, oh, I've got it mastered. Well, to be clear, we've explored many topics on this show, which have been far more than simply negative. I mean, we've spoken about abuse, we've spoken about addiction, and those come to my mind immediately. So I sat down and I had a brief conversation with myself, which I often do. And I realized the reason I do address the topics that are hardly fun or enjoyable to talk about is precisely because exploring them, discussing them, understanding them is key to working with them and working through them. So when I viewed it in that context, I realized that I was actually being kind of foolish. Exploring stress will enable a far better life experience than trying to avoid it. And I know that. I mean, I do that in my daily life, just haven't quite gotten to the point of being absolutely perfect with it yet. Or pretty far from that. But it is a process. It is a process. So here we go. Last week, our topic was courage, which might have had something to do with my finally going for this topic this week. But I'm mentioning it now because I had started that discussion by looking at fears. I listed a whole series of different fears, and then we looked at how we address them courageously, not denying them, not saying that they're not powerful drivers in our lives, but understanding how they affect us and therefore how to process them. I considered doing something similar for the topic of stress. But I think the number of things that can stress a person is probably long enough to fill the entire time slot for the show. So instead, I would invite you to spend some time thinking about what stressors you face in your life. After the show is over, sit down, write down the stressors that you deal with. because that becomes your starting point for de-stressing. Counterintuitive as that may feel. Okay. So let's be sure that we're on the same page when we talk about stress. Let's consider what stress is and what it is not. Okay. This is important. What stress is not is a disease. It may very well lead to disease, dis-ease, but in and of itself, it is not. What stress is a response. Stress can be a physical response. When we spoke of fear last week, we noted that the brain is always looking for and it's always responding to what it perceives as a threat. Since our earliest days as a species, threats were literally potentially deadly. So we developed a physical response to enable the flight or fight response. The body's chemistry changes, hormones are released in an effort to prepare the body for the physical challenges it may face. We become more alert. Our muscles prepare to respond quickly. Our blood pressure increases. And the physical mechanisms within the body that deal with, things like immunity and healing, well, those are decreased because in that moment, they're not considered as critical. Now, obviously, we are no longer concerned that every possible stressor is potentially deadly. But our hard wiring remains. So when we are stressed, we might feel our heart racing. Our breathing may become shallow. We might feel tension in one or more parts of our body. I would be willing to bet that each of us can name where in our bodies we hold stress, where we feel that stress. Even though our full mental capacity can categorize threats appropriately, well, most of the time anyway, we still have the same physical responses. And we get to add in additional responses. Our emotions might kick in. We might become fearful, angry, withdrawn, a whole plethora of possible responses. And this is where dis-ease comes in. If we are stressed long enough, often enough, remember the way the body turns off what is considered non-essential in the moment? Well, this is where we could see our immune system taking a hit, and we become susceptible to a number of conditions or illnesses, both physical and mental. Think of that little blip called COVID-19. Many people who contracted COVID-19 had significant issues who might not have before because their stress level had been so incredibly high. So we know that we are thinking animals. We know that we are capable of bringing together many ideas and perspectives. But we are also at times susceptible to our wonderful big brain thinking us into more stress than is necessary. I want you to take a look at this graphic. Let me bring this up here. Okay. Now, consider that there is the way things are in life and the way things we would like things to be in life, or even feel that they should be or must be. The greater the disconnect between what is and what we would prefer or believe we must have, and the more emphasis we place on it, the greater the stress. Okay, very important. So let's get to the big question. Considering the way our brains are hardwired, is stress a choice? Well, the answer is no. And yes. Isn't that irritating? Or perhaps it's actually wonderful. I'll tell you what. Let's go right to one of the cornerstones of New Thought. Change your thinking, change your life. Or, as I prefer to say it, change your thinking, change your life experience. When deadlines loom, or illness or loss come up in our lives, we might very well and very reasonably feel stress. But how much stress and for how long we feel that stress depends on how we choose to act and react to the stressor in many situations. I've mentioned the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Dr. Susan Jeffers before. But there's one thing that she recommends, which is deceptively simple. She offers that affirming your ability to handle whatever comes your way is a winning strategy. It doesn't mean that life is suddenly going to become all sweetness and light and the birds are singing and all, but it does mean not adding to the anxiety and fear which produce stress. Now, I'm oversimplifying it for the sake of time, but this is a direct quote. Whatever happens to me, given any situation, I can handle it. That is your mantra. That is your affirmation. Now, I know that sounds simple to say, but not anywhere near as simple necessarily to embody. But then again, this does come from the very first chapter of her book. So there's a lot of strategy to back it up. And I cannot recommend the book more highly. I'll say this much here, though. When I think of the times in my life when something really threw me for a loop, something that felt like I'd never be able to get by it, you know what? I did. I think of the losses, the so-called failures, the illnesses, even the heart-wrenching tragedies that I could do nothing to stop. And I realized I handled them. Now, handling them did not mean they became unimportant. It doesn't mean that they were any less painful or even any less tragic. But I learned that I could choose to address them, to overcome some of them. I could choose to find ways to adapt to the changes other things brought and accept still others as just part of this crazy journey that we call life. As the author notes later on in her book, we are often taught to believe that negative equals realistic and positive equals unrealistic. Now, nothing could be farther from the truth. That's capital T, truth. And most certainly, not for those of us who ascribe to the philosophy of New Thought. If indeed we are co-creators of our life experience, as I believe most fervently that we are, the proof is all around. Why not hold the mental equivalent of success, of the ability to move forward, the ability to grow and to adapt? That is your choice. That is a step towards reducing and even eliminating stress. Now, to be clear, this is not spiritual bypass. The idea of that, kind of slap a happy smile on your face and ignore the harsh realities of life. No. This is about being open to possibility, open to clarity, open to allowing life to unfold and being open to what is mine to do. Take a little break here. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, let's see. It's difficult, this person says. I don't always get to see the names. It says it's difficult. I sometimes get lost in the space between the two of them, almost as if the discomfort of the stress is comfortable. Yes, I understand that. We get used to having a particular way of approaching things. We have a particular way of how things proceed. And the more often we take a given path, the more likely we are to take that path yet again. So we have to disrupt that in some way. We have to create new pathways, literally, in our brain. Yes, whatever happens, I can handle it. Indeed, that is going to be our mantra. All right. So, recall that when we first spoke about this, we were talking about the physical changes that stress can bring. It is absolutely crucial to note that continual, unabated, or chronic stress is essentially toxic. All right, it can be toxic to our systems if it is not addressed. Now, I would love to be able to tell you, hey, here's a foolproof recipe, right? This will reduce stress, it will eliminate stress. But you know what? We're individuals. We're unique, even though we have many similarities. So just as each of us has our own stressors, each of us needs to find what is appropriate for where we are in our life, given our beliefs, our experiences, our knowledge, and our mindset. I doubt that any adult who has dealt with COVID-19 has not felt the effects of stress on their daily life. Perhaps more stress than they had ever encountered. I don't need to rehash the pain and suffering that this pandemic brought. There were times in the beginning that many of us expected to see it flare up and then settle down. It's like, oh, sure, weeks, a month maybe. And then there were times after a while when many of us wondered if we would ever see anything resembling normalcy again. Today I opened up a large drawer which holds all my COVID masks. I looked at them and I said a prayer of thanksgiving and a prayer of remembrance. Today, I can walk about freely. I can hug my friends and my loved ones. I can shake hands without fearing it's going to end me or it might end someone else. Quite a change for the first time in the early stages of the pandemic when I remember going out to get gas for the first time. And it was an absolute terror. I literally had to pull off to the side of the road after I had left the gas station. And I had to just have a minor fit until I could calm myself down and said, all right, you're fine. You're fine. A lot of breathing and a lot of hand antiseptic and just a touch of meditation. And I was fine. I've dealt with abuse, addiction, cancer. They've all tried to take me down. Here I stand, Well, sit actually. Which brings me to my next choice regarding stress. Choosing to ask for help. The people that I've worked with who have suffered the most with stress were predominantly those who wouldn't or couldn't ask for help from others. And to be fair, they might well have asked, they might have been willing to accept it, but could not find it. If you're one of those people that's having a difficult time finding support for stress, let me know. You can send me an email. Nope, that's not what I wanted to put up. What did I want to put up? Where we go? This one. All right. If you need help finding resources, you can always send me an email, zodemiro@gmail.com. Be more than happy to help you with that. No one should have to do any of this alone. You know, the strength of the broad back on which one carries the burdens of the world is nothing compared to the strength of the outstretched hand accepting another's support. You know, very interesting difference in how we deal with stress has to do with age. There have been numerous studies which show that younger people and older people differ significantly in their ability to handle stress. Turns out that younger people have a more difficult time handling stress, and the percentage of young people reporting significant difficulty has risen over the years. The studies suggest that the reason older people tend to handle stress more effectively is that they have experienced so much more in their lives and have seen how they've been able to work through situations and work through circumstances. And they have the experience and the skills to find solutions. Basically, success breeds success. On the other side of this, though, is chronic stress. Chronic stress tends to be problematic for all ages, but it actually is of greater consequence for older people, most likely because of its duration and the accumulated effects on the body and the mind. But just as stressors differ from person to person, so too do stressors differ by age. So, for the most part, choices for how you handle, reduce, or avoid stress also tend to work well regardless of age. So, let's talk about something here. For example, one of the biggest factors in dealing with stress is sleep, or more correctly, what brings about stress oftentimes is lack of sleep. Studies are showing that we're sleeping less and sleeping less restfully. You know, the effects of too little sleep are unfortunately very clear to many of us, or they might not actually be clear, but we still feel those effects. So if you are dealing with a lot of stress, consider what's going on with what we call your sleep hygiene. Choosing to improve it, which would encompass both the physical environment in which you sleep, so literally the room, the bed, the lighting, all of that, as well as the daily routines. What do you do when you get up? What do you do before you go to bed? What do you do an hour before, 2 hours before? All of that can have a tremendously beneficial effect on stress reduction and a host of other issues. But you have to become aware of it. You have to actually spend the time to understand it. Oh, hi, Shay. Shay is one of the wonderful people here on the New Thought Media Network. She's going to have a show coming up soon. And hopefully your day has been less stressful, Shay. Okay, so we're talking about the effects of sleep or the lack of sleep on people. And this has really become a huge problem for children. Considering that pediatricians recommend that young people between the ages of 6 and 17 require about 9 hours of sleep each night. It's really easy to see that that number is rarely met these days. We have a real problem here. Insufficient sleep for children has been linked with poor academic performance, increased risk of obesity, increased risk of disease, higher rates of drug and alcohol use, and even more frequent injuries. Some of the choices that one can make to improve this situation can be daunting at first, but absolutely could yield tremendous benefits. So, regardless of age, most of us spend far too much time on things like social media, watching shows online or on television, texting, and so-called multitasking, a term I wish would disappear since it doesn't truly exist for humans. Computers, yes, computers can multitask because they have what are called parallel processors, almost like having multiple brains. But people, no, no. With combinations of all the different activities that we put ourselves through, and then far too little time doing things like exercising or just literally moving about or reading or being fully present to the moment. All right, those are the types of things that we need to do. Setting boundaries for yourself and negotiating them with your children, which, by the way, works far better than the because I said so that I grew up with, can be very effective in breaking the cycle of what I call device distress, in which our devices tend to rule our actions. How many times have you picked up your phone to text someone and then, oh, you drop into social media. Oh, and then you watch a bunch of videos and on and on. I've chosen to put what I call the not before this time or activity and the not after this time or activity practices in place for myself, and they're proving invaluable. And Shay says that I just set some intentions around sleep and rest. No phone or scrolling 1 hour before bed, in bed by 10, then pray without ceasing. Love it. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Another benefit of reducing device time is the reduction of the onslaught of factors which promote stress. Sensationalistic and oftentimes very disturbing newscasts in which controversy and tragedy play far more often than anything that's uplifting or joyful. You know, they've done studies where when TV shows had a story that was uplifting and they had a story that was tragic, the number of people who responded to the tragic one was far greater than the people who responded to the good one. We get set in these patterns. So let's break those patterns. By the way, I have an easy way for you to do that, besides simply turning off the broadcast periodically. Right here on the New Thought Media Network, we have a show called And Now the Good News. Reverend Robert Brzezinski usually hosts this. It airs every Friday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. Folks, this is an antidote to the typical doom and gloom newscasts. Similarly, the constant barrage of commercials and product offers specifically designed to give us a feeling of lack, a feeling of need. That can bring up so much stress. So, other choices which we can use to provide relief would be reading books you find uplifting or informative, meditating, listening to soothing music, especially music at 528 hertz. It's very important. Check that one out. If you have YouTube, you can find YouTube videos that'll play that music for you. Take a soothing bath before bedtime. One or more of those can be calming and restorative. We're going to go over time today. To be absolutely clear, there are certainly times when therapy and or medication may be necessary to ease the process of breaking that stress cycle. And there's no reason to feel less than or to feel shameful for doing so. Okay? One of the greatest ways that you can reduce your stress is through compassion. Compassion for others and compassion for yourself. Okay? Compassion for yourself. Just as I was stressing that I'm not handling stress as well as I would like, adding that stress on top of the stress because I'm not feeling that I'm doing it well, that's no benefit. All right? Compassion. Compassion. Now, before we end today, I do want to mention a different kind of stress called eustress. That's spelled EUSTRESS. Eustress refers to stress that is the opposite of distress, and it leads to a positive response. It can refer to any type of beneficial stress, whether it's physical or it's psychological. Now, we tend to perceive this type of stress as being manageable, and it's even motivating. We probably don't ever call it stress. We typically call it excitement. So physically, while eustress might very well resemble distress in many ways. For example, you might actually, even though you're excited, you might feel nervous. Your heart might pound. Your thoughts might race. The difference is how these physical sensations are perceived. The exact same physical sensations can be exciting rather than stress. So once again, our perspective, our mindset comes into play. It's yet another example of the importance of our thoughts. So for today, I want to end with this quote from Dr. Joan Borsenko. Put this up here. I love this. Every day brings a choice to practice stress or to practice peace. I'm going to leave that up. Well, folks, that's going to do it for today. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on choice and stress. So please feel free to email me at zodemuro@gmail.com. I always hold whatever you share with me in complete confidence, of course. And as I had said earlier, if you're having difficulty finding resources to help with your stress, by all means, do let me know. And while you're at it, what topics do you want to see discussed in a future episode? I'm always interested in hearing what would make a difference to you. Once again, zodemuro@email.com is my email address. Folks, I love the fact that you spend your time with me each week. But I also want you to go to ntmedia.org and see what we have to offer, because there's a lot going on. Today, for example, 12 noon Pacific time, 1 p.m. Mountain time, Finding the Joy in the Journey, the amazing Reverend Gina Calvario-Krupka. And today her special guest is Jennifer Urizio. At 1 p.m. Mountain time, 2 p.m. 1 p.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Mountain time, the Vibrant Living Hour with the ever-engaging and vibrant practitioner, Ken Ludwig. 3 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Mountain time. This is something fairly new. Rev Brock Ford's Spiritual Toolkit. 7:15 p.m. Pacific, 8:15 p.m. Mountain time. We go back to our evening prayers. And tomorrow, live from Salt Lake Centers for Spiritual Living at 6 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Mountain time, it's a Ricky Byers concert. So if you're looking for prayer, meditation, information, music, discussion, even good news, we've got it, and we've got so much more. Because it is our mission at the New Thought Media Network to bring the joy of new thought, the benefits of new thought, to the widest audience possible. So in addition to the time and talent that it takes to present all of that, it does indeed take treasure as well. If you have found benefit in what we do, please go to ntmedia.org/donate. Help us make this a world that does truly work for everyone. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Until we do meet again, choose wisely. Much love and many, many blessings.
Choice, your creative superpower. We have the power to manifest as we dedicate attention to our thoughts, but often miss opportunity to achieve the greatest good. Your superpower is waiting to be unleashed to unlock a fuller, more rewarding world for all. Join us every Thursday at noon Mountain Time for Choice, your creative superpower with Zoe Muro.